Inside a small convenience store called Marty's Market, the aisles are stacked with old cereal boxes, faded candy wrappers, and the hum of a soda fridge. Outside, Caleb Foster, 24 years old, paces back and forth, his hood drawn tight against the drizzle. His jaw clenches. The rage that's been simmering for months boils over tonight. His father had worked for that store for 15 years until Marty Harris, the owner, fired him after an argument over missing money. A week later, his father drank himself into oblivion and died. Caleb never forgave Marty. When the match touched the gasoline-soaked rag that night, Caleb felt a perverse sense of justice. The explosion ripped through the dark like thunder, orange flames devouring everything his father once knew. He didn't see the man trapped inside until it was too late. Marty Harris, crawling toward the back door, flames reflecting in his terrified eyes. Caleb ran, heart pounding. He didn't look back. But the image of that burning man would haunt him for decades. Welcome to Shadows of Justice, where crime meets compassion. If you are new here, don't forget to hit the subscribe button, like, comment, and share. For returning viewers, thanks for sticking to the channel. 17 years later, the same block stands rebuilt and thriving. The city changed, Caleb did too. Now 41, his hands are calloused from years of construction work, his back bent from carrying guilt heavier than bricks. He lives quietly in a small apartment above a hardware store, sober, alone, and haunted. Every night he walks by the corner where Marty's Market once stood. In its place is an empty lot, fenced off by rusted wire, a void that mirrors the emptiness inside him. The world forgot that fire, but he never could. Caleb tried everything to make peace with himself, volunteer work, therapy, church, but absolution never came. The fire had consumed more than wood and glass. It had burned his soul. Then one evening he noticed something new, a hand-painted sign on the fence that read, "Future Site of the Cornerstone Market, a Community Project." Below it, a faded photograph of an older man in a wheelchair holding a coffee cup. The caption, "In honor of Martin Harris, who taught us that forgiveness rebuilds what hatred destroys." Caleb froze. Marty Harris was alive. The next week, Caleb found himself standing outside the Riverside Rehabilitation Center. He rehearsed a dozen versions of what to say, all of them inadequate. Marty Harris, now 67, sat by the window, the right side of his face marred by burn scars that time hadn't softened. His right hand trembled slightly as he turned the page of a book. When Caleb approached, Marty's eyes lifted, steady, cautious, but not unkind. "Can I help you?" asked Marty, his voice rough but patient. Caleb hesitated. "I worked near your store years ago. I remember the fire." A shadow crossed Marty's face, then a weary smile. "People always remember the fire, but nobody remembers the man I used to be before it." They spoke for an hour about the city, about survival, about regret. Marty didn't recognize him, of course. Caleb introduced himself as Cal, a construction worker trying to turn his life around. When Marty left, he said softly, "The past doesn't have to own us, son. Sometimes you rebuild, not to forget, but to remember differently." Those words struck him harder than the flames ever had. Weeks turned into months. Caleb volunteered at the Cornerstone Project, the new store being built in Marty's honor. He carried lumber, poured concrete, and hung drywall with quiet precision. Each nail he drove felt like a confession, each brick a prayer for forgiveness. Other volunteers grew fond of him. They called him the silent worker. None of them knew his secret, but every day he found himself drawn to Marty's corner of the site, where the old man, despite his injuries, insisted on overseeing progress from his wheelchair.
One evening, as the sunset bled across the horizon, Marty called out, "You got a steady hand, Cal. You ever think about running your own crew?" Caleb smiled faintly. "Used to have one. Lost it all years ago." "Then maybe this place is your chance to start again." Caleb nodded, holding back tears. "Maybe it is." It happened on a rainy afternoon, the same kind of rain that fell the night of the fire. The roof was almost complete, the store's sign ready to be mounted. Marty sat inside, sipping coffee, staring out the window. Caleb entered quietly, water dripping from his jacket. "Marty," he began, voice trembling, "there's something I need to tell you, something I've carried too long." Marty turned, puzzled. "Go ahead." Caleb's words came like shards of glass. "I was the one who set that fire. The night your store burned. It was me. I thought I was getting justice for my father, but I destroyed everything instead." The silence was unbearable. Marty's eyes widened, not in anger, but in recognition. He set down his cup slowly. "I knew," Marty said finally. "Not your name, but your eyes. I saw you that night, before the smoke took me down." Caleb's knees buckled. "Then why would you let me near this project?" Marty's gaze softened. "Because I needed to know whether the man who destroyed my life could help rebuild it, and now I see he can." Tears blurred Caleb's vision. "You should hate me." "I did," Marty whispered, "for years. But hate's a fire, too. It burns until there's nothing left. I decided I'd rather rebuild than burn again." 6 months later, the Cornerstone Market opened with quiet dignity. The walls smelled of fresh paint, the shelves stocked with donated goods. The community gathered for the ribbon cutting, city officials, volunteers, families, and one man in a wheelchair beside another who once destroyed everything he had. Marty gave a short speech. "This store isn't about what we lost. It's about what we found, the courage to forgive, to rebuild, to believe that even those who destroy can learn to heal." Then he handed the scissors to Caleb. "You built this, Cal. You should open it." Caleb hesitated, hands trembling, then cut the ribbon. The crowd applauded. Cameras flashed, but all he could see was Marty, smiling, not as a victim, but as a survivor who had chosen peace. A year later, Marty passed away quietly in his sleep. At the funeral, Caleb stood among the mourners, holding an envelope with his name on it. Inside was a handwritten note. "Caleb, you rebuilt what you once destroyed. That's more than most men ever do. Don't let this be the end of your redemption. Build for others now. Marty." Caleb looked up at the sky, tears streaming down his face. The wind carried the scent of sawdust and rain, the scent of his new life. He kept the store running, hiring ex-convicts and troubled youth, teaching them construction, repair, and forgiveness. Every nail driven, every wall painted, carried the echo of Marty's voice. You rebuild to remember differently. Years later, an older Caleb stood outside the store at dusk, its neon sign glowing warmly against the night. Cornerstone Market, built by hands that learned to heal. He watched a young boy sweep the steps, reminding him of himself decades ago, angry, lost, desperate. He approached the boy and handed him a sandwich. "Don't make the same mistakes I did," he said softly. The boy nodded. "Thanks, Mr. Foster." As Caleb turned away, a faint reflection of the old flames danced in his mind, but now they didn't burn, they illuminated. Forgiveness does not erase the past, it rebuilds it into something worth living for.
Even from the ashes of vengeance, redemption can rise, brick by brick, when a man dares to face the fire within. This is Shadows of Justice, where crime meets compassion. Subscribe for more emotional true crime and redemption storytelling, where every scar tells a story worth hearing.